Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast, finishing out the month of April. April showers, we've been told, bring May flowers, so it's going to be a very nice smelling month coming up. I'm Illeagle86, one of your three stalwart hosts. I'm joined, as ever, by the lovely Nerdbomber. Nerdbomber, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Feeling good like I should.
Are you feeling it? Because you've been feeling it 2 episodes in a row, and I wanted to check in with you on the feeling it wise.
I am. You know, on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'm not like the 10 like I was the last couple of weeks, but I'd say I'm still riding about an 8 or a 9. So
that's good.
Yeah.
We're in B plus A minus territory. Techtic.
To piggyback off what Nerdbomber said, I'm feeling blessed.
Too blessed to be stressed?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Right on. I'm doing fine too. We're all in a good place. This is going to be a source of positivity in your day, whatever you're doing right now, working out, just, I don't know, laying on your couch. If you listen to podcasts to go to sleep to, first of all, it's an interesting move. I have done that though. Have you guys ever listened to a podcast to fall asleep?
I've tried, but then it got me all fired up.
What was the podcast? What got you fired up?
I don't remember. It was just, they were talking about some controversial stuff, and I said, oh, hell no.
I mean, we probably fire people. I know for a fact I've gotten some tweets sent in my direction that we fired people up for good reason, I would think. I want to shout out a podcast that I've listened to go to sleep. It's really the only one that makes sense. LeVar Burton reads. Have I talked about LeVar Burton reads on the podcast before? Because
I think briefly, and I can only
it,
imagine how soothing that must be to go to bed to.
He literally, because the podcast, for those that don't know, he literally, it's all it is he picks like a short story, usually science fiction, and he just tells the story. But every episode, he says what story he's going to tell, and he talks about it and like why he likes it and stuff. And then before he starts, he says, "Okay, now everyone take a deep breath," and you hear him take like a.
Oh, that's nice.
And that's how it starts. And I mean, the first time my fiance and I listened to that podcast,
is that coming more easily to you, by the way? The fiance?
That's the first time I have not stumbled over it. And I'm so glad you pointed that out. Every time I've taken to calling her my finance because that's easier as words go for me. But first time my fiance and I listened to that podcast, I think I woke up like I had drooled. Like, it was so powerful. I didn't just fall asleep. I fell asleep with my mouth open, I guess is what that means. I drooled everywhere. And if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what it is.
It was both shocking and relaxing.
LeVar Burton is going to be the guest host. They answered the calls of the many LeVar Burton fans out there. He's going to guest host Jeopardy, and some people are thinking it's an audition for the big boy job, for like the whole kit and caboodle. I couldn't be more excited. I'm a big fan of LeVar Burton's. I mean, the three of us all grew up with reading Rainbow. Is that?
Take a look in a book.
Right.
It's reading Rainbow. I can go anywhere.
Yeah, it was reading Rainbow. LeVar, here's to you, man. I'll tweet at you at some point. We'll talk. Anyways, April's ending. May's coming up. May's a good month, but we have some stuff to talk about today, as usual in the realm of nerd, I guess you could very broadly say. We're going to be talking about the announcement of Captain America 4, and we are going to be talking, I think that's going to be couched in some discussion of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so I guess prepare yourself however you need to. We're going to be talking about Ratchet and Clank Rifts Apart. We got a new gameplay trailer for that. That's super exciting. And then we're going to be talking about How I Met Your Mother, or rather, How I Met Your Father. So that's kind of a little bit of a tease for that.
I'm so excited.
A show that, are you guys currently in your watch through of that? I know it was recent you were talking about it.
Yeah, we are, I guess we'll talk about it later, but we are currently in season 9, which is the last season. We're like 4 episodes into it. So we're almost done. Probably by this time next week, we will be done with it because we have binged it like crazy. Like, it's insane. We probably go through 4 episodes a day easily.
Well, but they're 22 minutes. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's like an hour a day, really. If you stack most of them up, it's not too bad.
Right. But so you have a vested interest in that. So yeah, we'll get to that. I want to start with Captain America 4. So
boo hiss. Sorry. It's
fine.
Expected of me at this point. It is.
But you know, this is gonna. When we've talked about this before, taking this to air. Obviously, we don't just bring stuff to air without talking about whether we're going to talk about it. That's not how this show works. Nerdbomber knows how I felt about the ending of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I guess I'm gonna try not to get spoilery, but I mean, I'm gonna talk a little bit about. I mean, Captain America 4 has been announced. Obviously, I have to talk about the direction of certain characters that were in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So if you haven't seen it and you're planning on seeing the finale, pause the podcast and go do it.
And if you don't plan on watching it, check out a comic book. Y'all want to know about U.S. Agent?
Right. Yeah. So, well, we're gonna talk about U.S. Agent, but. Okay, so the trajectory of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was, if you've seen any trailer, if you know anything about the characters going into this show, you know what is going to happen. At the end of Endgame, Steve Rogers gives the shield to Sam Wilson and basically says, "This is yours now." And long story short, the show did not change that arc really at all. It was a detour. So Captain America 4, the new Captain America, is Sam Wilson. So that's a spoiler, but it also should not come as a surprise to you.
So for the record, for any listeners who haven't realized this over the last few weeks, we have not watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier yet. And even I knew that was the trajectory because they set it up where if you didn't watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you wouldn't have known that he wasn't not going to be Captain America. I don't know if I double negative that correctly, but
I think you're right. I think Disney and Marvel are probably trying to be cagey about, okay, well, you don't need to have Disney Plus. You can still go to the movies and watch the movies. So they don't want people to be confused. And I think to a certain extent, WandaVision was actually a little bit less so. Like WandaVision, there were some changes made, but at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the majority of characters end up right where they started. And the promotional material for Falcon and the Winter Soldier 2, it showed Sam Wilson throwing the shield around. And in episode 1, he gives the shield to a museum. You know that he's going to end up with the shield later on, and it's probably going to be because he's the new Captain America. Now, to be perfectly clear, I've always liked Falcon as a character. I'm on board with him being the new Captain America. I think it's a sensible transition. My understanding is that it's true to the comics, which I have less familiarity with. Techtic, I know you know pretty much everything there is to know. My issue with all of this, so the actual announcement too, we should go through that. Captain America 4 is officially in development, with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier showrunner Malcolm Spellman writing the script for Captain America 4 alongside a staff writer from the show as well. This is what my problem is. The finale of this show was bad. I will die on this hill. I know this is as good a time as any for a Twitter shout out. At @OW_Leo86, at @OW Nerdbomber, at @OW Techtic, at Online Warriors 1, the main show account. This thing, I think what I said to Nerdbomber after I watched it might as well have been written in crayon. And I stand by that. I will say the action scenes, very good. They know that when you show up to this, you're looking for comic book fights. And in the finale in particular, we get that in spades. But there were, without getting into specifics, there were character arcs that made no sense. There was this speech at the end where the new Captain America is talking to some senators. And if you've seen the finale, you know what I'm talking about. That my eyes almost rolled clean out of my head. I think the character direction of Sam Wilson, I think the general goal of the show, again, within these constraints that it can't take the characters too far from where they were left in Endgame, I think within those constraints, it was very well intended, but it's going to be hard for me to watch Captain America 4 if it's written the way that Falcon and the Winter Soldier was. And, I know Nerdbomber and Techtic, you have not watched the show, but, I certainly know Nerdbomber has strong feelings about Captain America. Does the fact that Captain America 4 is going to focus on the new Captain America, Sam Wilson, does it warm you to it at all? Or are you still assuming, especially based on what I've just said, that he's going to be this kind of, I don't want to say phony virtuous, but like overly righteous character? Does that turn you off?
I like Sam Wilson. I think one of the things that appealed to me was that he was kind of a stark contrast to Captain America. Like he was always kind of a little more sassy isn't the right word that I want to use, but that's how I would describe. He was a little bit more sarcastic and just like spunky and not
he has
necessarily.
Rougher edges.
Yeah, he's not necessarily 100% by the book, and that's what I like out of my superheroes. But if they're going to force him into what you just dubbed like this false virtue or whatever, that just rubs me the wrong way. I think if they need to keep Captain America, they need to transform him into somebody who regular people can relate to.
So U.S. Agent.
Well, not like a bad.
Maybe.
I don't know anything about U.S. Agent. I'm just talking on my butt here. But
yeah, I don't know if we can get into U.S. Agent fully because you guys haven't seen that at all. But
I feel like he still has to be a good guy, obviously, but can we not have the everything has to be perfect and idealistic type of good guy? Because I like the Tony Stark type of good guy, which I would have said that Sam Wilson was closer to Tony Stark type personality in terms of a superhero, in my opinion. Now, maybe not like the arms dealer side, but like, you know what I mean?
Well, so the irony here is that Captain, in the canon of the MCU, Captain America is actually the lawbreaker. Let's not gloss over that. I totally agree with your opinion of him, but actually, Captain America is the lawbreaker and Tony Stark is not. I agree with your assessment of Sam Wilson. I think he has rougher edges. I think the thing that up to now has most characterized Sam Wilson in the MCU has been his loyalty, in particular to Steve Rogers, but in general his loyalty, and that makes him a great character. I don't know where that loyalty is going to be directed now that he is the front man. In the show, it was kind of to the Winter Soldier, I guess. I don't know. Techtic, you were going to say something.
So I think his righteousness is well placed in this case. I think Captain America's righteousness was sort of this blind patriotism, and that's kind of the same with U.S. Agent, where they just have this blind, America's great and amazing, yeah. And I call malarkey on that one, whereas that's the case. Whereas Falcon or Sam Wilson, he actually knows the history of the super soldier serum, both the good and the bad. So having this righteous stance on it speaks to me more completely than all these other renditions that we've seen thus far. And so I'm thumbs up on that righteousness personally. Thumbs down on him being Captain America because he's not a super soldier.
That's another thing. Yeah.
When we see him throwing the shield at these incredible forces, bro, did you have your Wheaties this morning? Where did that come from?
Sure. Like they in the show, the way they handle it is there's kind of a 2-minute training montage where it shows him learning how to throw the shield.
But it's not necessarily
can you physically do it. It's how do you throw it to get it.
Come on, it's not technique. Back. You can't put someone on a bench and say bench 400 pounds. Oh, by the way, here's a quick technique on how to do it. Come on.
Right.
One of the things that I am concerned about, not to switch gears, and I guess it's just the writing team. And Malcolm Spellman, granted, I've never watched Empire. I haven't watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I've just kind of lived vicariously through you. I will watch it at some point, so I'll form my own opinion. But I do have experience with him with Truth Be Told. And granted, he was a producer and wasn't credited as a writer. But Truth Be Told was an Apple TV Plus show. It had Jesse Pinkman. I can't remember his name, but it was that
Aaron Paul.
Yeah, it was the podcasting show essentially, where it was like a true crime podcast, and she gets overly involved in the criminal and whether or not he's actually innocent because she put him in jail. So now she feels she's having like this guilty conscience sort of thing and has to dig back into the past. And it was fine. Capital F fine. It wasn't great though. And it was another of those things where there were a lot of plot holes. It just was kind of unsatisfying the way that concluded. And that's, you got to do better if you're talking about an MCU film. So that's my concern.
The other thing we have to consider here, and this may be a source of my bias, may be that, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, first of all, is my favorite MCU movie, and Civil War was also phenomenal. And who directed both of those movies? The Russos, the crown princes of the MCU, right? It's hard for me to imagine the franchise, as different as it is with a new Captain America, it's still trying to be a similar thing, right? And it's going to be in the hands of somebody else. And so, to me, we've already suffered for that with the show.
I could tell you what they're probably going to do. Falcon is not going to last as Captain America. He's probably going to die. I hate to say it.
I disagree. Wow. I feel like they're setting up these characters, and I know that's probably what happens in a comic book, so you're drawing on that reference, but I feel like they're setting up these characters for the next phase. So maybe in phase 3, we'll see that. God knows what that's going to be, but...
What I think they're setting up for is an actual super soldier to take on the mantle, and I think it's either going to be...
Bucky or U.S. Agent.
No, neither. I think it's going to be either A... somehow Captain America will be brought back some way, which
no.
I don't think they're going to do that. Or B, Isaiah Bradley's grandson is going to take on the mantle because he actually has that serum genetically in his blood.
Who is Isaiah Bradley?
So he's in the show.
Okay.
I won't get into him now. Incidentally, I believe his grandson's also in the show. That's possible. I think it's more likely that U.S. Agent or Bucky take it over. I don't know. We shouldn't speculate too much. I mean, the news here is that Captain America 4 is being made, which I don't think was previously known. I don't know if that was previously mentioned on any MCU docket, any of the many, timelines that we've been shown. But what it means for these characters remains to be seen. In as much as I've just crapped all over it, you should go watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if only so you can argue with me on Twitter.
So you're not like me,
or not.
who's like, who is this person?
Sure, that's another good reason. There were certain things that it did well, and I certainly, I like the evolution of Sam's character. I like where he is now, but boy, the journey in terms of the writing and also occasionally in terms of the acting, not by Anthony Mackie, but Sebastian Stan barely showed up. Not to call him out specifically, but he barely showed up. It just left a lot to be desired in the execution. But go check it out. Baron Zemo dancing alone, it's worth the cost of admission. It's 6 episodes. They're each an hour long, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge time commitment. If you're a fan of the MCU, there are going to be sequences that delight you. They know what they are doing at this point. It's just, in the quieter moments, there were some stumbles here. So let us know what you think about Captain America. Whose theory do you agree with? Do you think Isaiah Bradley's grandson is going to step up? Let us know. @OW@Illeagle86, @OW Techtic, @OW Nerdbomber, @OnlineWarriors1. Hit us up there. Let us know. We are going to move on now to talk a little bit about Ratchet and Clank Rifts Apart. Now, we've talked about this on the show many a time, positively, and for good reason. We've seen extended gameplay footage before this, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but we got like a 5-minute gameplay video that looked phenomenal. And guess what? We got another gameplay video, kind of a gameplay trailer today, at the day we recorded this. And guess what? It's phenomenal. Like, I don't know. This might be a short segment because I think all of us are in agreement. This looks outstanding. Graphically, story-wise, it's setting things up in a really good way. I do have one question, which Nerdbomber in particular may be able to answer, which is, what is a Lombax? This was the first time I had heard this term, and they sprinkled it throughout the trailer with reckless abandon. I assume that's what Ratchet is?
Yeah, a Lombax is the species that Ratchet is, and it was thought that I believe Ratchet was the last Lombax, so...
He may be the last in his dimension.
Right.
That's where this is headed. I think.
I'm really excited. Because they've been kind of teasing. They're like, oh, what is her name? Because the female Lombax has shown up in several trailers at this point. And I really like that they named her Rivet and didn't go... Like, they kept to that hardware naming convention, and I really like that. I'm a big fan.
So, but the potential here, and this is going to be a conversational retread probably, but the potential here is boundless, right? The idea being there's all these dimensional rifts that are opened, and at any given moment, you could travel from one dimension to another, and everything might change. And this has always been designed, too, to be, a true test of the PS5 hardware, which, by the way, I'm seeing so many PlayStation's uploading like 1 billion minute-long videos about how great their hardware is, and I'm like, I know. I want one. Like, you don't have to sell me on it. I know about the solid state drive. I know about fast load times. I know about I/O. Like, I get it. But this is going to test that, right? Not that it hasn't already been tested by other games, but
yeah, I think this will be the first
test.
Major true test, because we've seen it, like you said, like basically any game that is ported to the PS5 gets an upgrade. And obviously, yes, like I think Astro's Playroom obviously really took advantage of the controller, like the haptic feedback and all the new controller features for the DualSense, and games like Sackboy: Big Adventure also took advantage of that. But we haven't seen a game that's like truly tapped into the potential of using that solid state drive to make crazy transitions.
Need to take the subway with Miles Morales.
That is actually really true, yeah. And Spider-Man Miles Morales, I think this is the first time that a game has been built solely for the PS5, because up until now, for the most part, most of the other games have also been backwards compatible for the PlayStation 4. And yeah, right. that poses some limits, because you have to at least keep some things similar between the two versions. And so that puts some limitations on PlayStation 5 versions. So I am excited about the hardware capabilities. And honestly, the story of this game. I am a big, I like my dumb cutesy stories. I really loved the Ratchet and Clank storylines, just like I loved the Sly Cooper storylines, the Jack and Daxter storylines. I'm a big fan of that. And this, I just love it. I'm here for it.
I like what it opens the possibility of. So they had pointed that Nefarious has a more competent version in another dimension. Ratchet has a female counterpart in another dimension, it seems. But what's really, really exciting about that is we only saw one other dimension. So he can have a team of various Lombaxes that probably in the end cutscene, we're going to see them all be like, get him! Ah! And they're all just charge.
Yeah. Or do they leave this dimensional rifting thing? You know, a big question, I guess, would be, at the end of this story, are they going to make sure that this sort of dimensional rifting can't happen anymore? Or are they going to say, hey, we're going to leave this as an open, we can make a billion games with this concept, right? Because every game is just a different dimensional rift.
Well, it
presents
has
a lot of possibility.
Into the Spider-Verse feel to this, where you can set up the possibility of this Ratchet first, I guess I'll call it. And now you have so many different worlds to explore, so many different characters. You can really expand anywhere.
But they sealed that forever. That's why it was all sad when Gwen went.
Right, but now you've been introduced to all of those characters in the Spider-Verse, so like really they could explore each of those individual worlds if they wanted to. And the same thing could happen here.
Might we get a Rivet and what's another, not Clank, because Clank will be with Ratchet. Rivet and Smash. No, I'll workshop it. But next game, you know.
What's the opposite of Nefarious? You'll have a good version of him. Like,
yeah, but then there's no game.
We'll just call him Good Guy Greg.
Splendiferous. Something good.
Or you have a universe where Ratchet is the bad guy and Nefarious is not nefarious.
Right. I think of it.
Call him Raunchet. Raunchy.
Staying in the kind of PS exclusives realm, like what Uncharted did with The Lost Legacy, which granted I did not play. I have not played it, even though I'm a huge Uncharted fan, but there's a lot of potential for offshoots here, right? So it's super exciting for a Ratchet and Clank fan, super exciting for any platformer fan. It looks like it's going to be a classic platformer. And it comes out on June 11th of this year. Now, Nerdbomber, have you already pre-ordered this, or are you going to? This has to be a pre-order situation for you.
I had pre-ordered this as soon as pre-orders launched a few months ago. This was like the first thing in my cart. I am so excited about this game. I feel like the PlayStation 5 has really reinvigorated my love of the 3D platformer. And if you would have asked me if that's what I would have gotten out of the next generation, I would have laughed at you if this was like 2 years ago. But here we are between Astro's Playroom, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and Ratchet and Clank. Like, I am living my best life with these 3D platformers. And I'm so excited to get my hands on Ratchet and Clank, because I think out of all of the new game releases that we've been teased, this is arguably the one that I'm most excited about. And I'm usually, I mean, you guys know me, I usually play like my shooter games and stuff like that. But man, I'm really feeling my return to the 3D platforming space.
Right, back to your roots, so to speak. It kind of puts me in mind of, I remember in the Xbox 360 generation, you guys might remember this, they announced they were coming out with a new Banjo-Kazooie game.
Oh, yeah.
Nuts and bolts. And they ruined it in like numerous ways. I think I did play it. I don't think I played it for very long because it was clear that it was going to be all about just building the little cars or whatever, which is not what the game is. Like, thinking back to the original Banjo-Kazooies, that is the one risk here with Ratchet and Clank. I don't think they're going to fall into it, but what Rifts Apart has to make sure not to do is not stray from the core gameplay. And if my memory serves me correctly, Nuts and Bolts did that in spades. And the trailers and the gameplay footage don't make it appear that it's going to be so. I'm just something for them to watch out for in the interest of trying to insert some potentially negative discourse into this discussion, which is otherwise all positive. That's one thing I think they need to watch out for.
I know we also didn't discuss this on our docket, but I will say more positive news from PlayStation was also the potential inclusion of a video service in their PS Plus. And I know, Illeagle, you don't subscribe to PS Plus, but I do. And I don't necessarily know if I need this video service, but give that to me with my Ratchet and Clank eventually, and I'm pretty happy.
It just brings us one step closer to the streaming nexus, right? Where eventually there's so many streaming services that they all turn into one service.
Yeah.
Right?
It's one of those things where I'm torn because I feel like I've gone on the rant about how I don't like so many different streaming services, but if it's given to me for free with something I already subscribe to, like, well, I guess I'll take it. Kind of like what HBO did. I was like, well, I'm getting this for free anyway. I'll take it.
Right. Which I know, yeah, I think you're going to talk about that later, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Something you watch on HBO. So that's a little tease for after the break. But right now we are going to head into our each episode we do an ad break, and it's about that time. But before we do, we would be remiss if we did not shout out our fantastic Patreon producers, Mr. Ben Checkness, Mr. Stephen Keller. Thank you both for keeping the lights on here. Not the proverbial lights. I'm actually sitting in a dark room, but you know that phrase, keeping the lights on, keeping the meter running, whatever you want to say. Ben and Steven support us on Patreon at the night level, which is the highest of our 3 levels of support. And as a result, they get access to our monthly secret segment and vlog. New secret segment coming out very soon, hint, hint. They also get input into our weekly game segment, and of course, this producer shout out, as well as the occasional guest spot. So you want to be in night. Night is the place to be, but there's also a Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And then there's also the lowly page, which gives you access to the monthly secret segment. So you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast for more of the details on that. In the meantime, thank you to Ben and Steven for keeping your seats at our round table, so to speak. Yeah, you guys are the best. We're going to take a short break now to shout out one of our sponsors. And after that, we'll be right back to talk about How I Met Your Father. Today's episode is brought to you by Brush. Brush is an electric toothbrush that will change the way you think about brushing your teeth. With powerful sonic technology and ultra-gentle brushes, the Brush redefines what it means to have super clean teeth. It's like that feeling when you just leave the dentist, a fresh, whole mouth clean every single day. Our listeners get 15% off their total purchase with code POD15. That's POD15. Follow the link in the show notes and enter the code POD15 to get your exclusive discount and upgrade your oral care routine. Thanks to Bruce for sponsoring this episode, and now, back to the episode. Okay, How I Met Your... Well, let's talk about How I Met Your Mother first, because, as has been mentioned, Nerdbomber and Techtic are currently knee-deep in a watch-through of the show. I have never watched... I'm sure I've watched an episode of the show. I certainly have not watched.
So sad for you.
I if I've watched one, it was incidental. I've never gone out of my way to try to watch the show. I have a general, I have the gist of what's going on. I don't know the particulars. Barney likes suits. Ted is always sad and in love. Robin is a go-getter, and Marshall and Lily are married. And at the end, well, should I say what's at the end? I don't want to spoil anybody, but I feel like everybody knows at this point how it ends. I guess I won't say.
He meets the mother.
He meets the mother, but I'm talking about after that. But
I don't actually know what happens at the end, so you shut your mouth.
You don't know what happens at the end?
This is his first watch through. I was also shocked. I don't know, how did both of you guys get away scot-free?
Well, here's the thing.
Really
I watched a lot of episodes up to season 8. I didn't make it through season 9 at all.
Yeah, but how do you not know?
Because I don't know.
I don't watch the show and I knew. This was like a Walking Dead Game of Thrones situation. I went out of my way to not see what happened, and guess what? I found out what happened. Anyways, we won't say what happens here in case you somehow haven't figured it out. But
he meets the mother.
He meets the mother. This show ended in 2014, and almost immediately after, the idea of a How I Met Your Father spinoff, actually initially starring Greta Gerwig, who, for those who don't know, directed Lady Bird and a bunch of other movies. That materialized quickly, but it actually never wound up getting off the ground. There were issues with the pilot, which I believe was actually filmed, but there were creative differences, all some of that nonsense, and so it never got off the ground. Now, the original showrunners are coming back in conjunction with, of all people, Lizzie McGuire, Hilary Duff, to reinvigorate and revitalize this idea of How I Met Your Father. So, I have no skin in the game here. I certainly like Hilary Duff, but I haven't seen anything she's done in years. I was excited about the Lizzie McGuire thing in 2019. That died over creative differences. So now I want to spin it over to Nerdbomber and Techtic. I mean, based on your experience now, I know Techtic, you don't know how I Met Your Mother ends, but I would think this would be a very loose spin-off. Are there going to be ties directly to the existing characters? There's not very much we know right now about this, just that it's happening.
So it appears to take place later on. It's talking about how she met the father in 2020, I believe it's 2021 time frame, and the story of How I Met Your Mother is being told in 2030. So there's about a 10-year difference between when the story's being taken place relative to when it's being told. And so the only overlap that I can really foresee is sort of maybe cameos walking by in the background as you remember those guys? That's about it.
I guess the main question, so the main character Hilary Duff's playing is named Sophie, according to Entertainment Weekly. Is she related to somebody? I think that's the clear question here. Is she someone's like sister or someone's niece or something? You know, I don't know where that fits into the time frames necessarily, but
Don't believe so. I think it's a very loosely based premise of this story.
Yeah, I just looked up. I honestly didn't even remember what Ted Mosby's children's names were, but Ted's daughter that he's telling the story to is Penny. So not, at least like they're not going to try to spin it that she's his daughter.
Well, she was a brunette. There's no way.
Right. I would highly doubt that there would be any tie-ins here. I think maybe they might keep the bar the same. They might keep McLaren's the same because that was such a huge kind of pivotal location where a lot of How I Met Your Mother took place over those 9 years.
It's the classic sitcom set situation where it's just, that's where stuff happens, you know?
Right. But like Techtic said, I would think it would be maybe cameos to the old characters at best. I think this will probably be a completely new show. And I have some mixed feelings on this. So like, I am excited because I've always loved How I Met Your Mother. I really enjoy this rewatch that I'm doing. Kind of coincidental that this news came out while we were doing a rewatch. So that was just dumb luck, I guess. But my thoughts, I don't know, how I feel about Hilary Duff at the helm. I really do like Hilary Duff, and I'm watching her in this TV show Younger, which airs on VH1, I think. It's I gotta be honest, it started out really good, and the final season is airing right now, and it's so bad. Like, the final season is super jumping the shark and not a great time at all.
If you guys want to tell for how good of a show is that Nerdbomber is watching, ask me how many episodes I've watched of it.
You've watched quite a bit, actually.
I've been present while you were watching them. I would not call that watching.
How many did you watch with interest?
3.
No, it's definitely been more than that.
4.
It's
okay, now you're
definitely
changing
more
the
than
number.
that. But essentially the premise of that show is that she is a young publishing editor trying to work her way up in the publishing world.
No, she's younger.
Well, no, the main character is a 40-year-old pretending that she's in her 20s to get a job in the publishing industry.
And she looks nothing like a 20-year-old, and no one could tell the difference.
In the beginning, she did. Now, not so much. In the beginning, she could pull it off. Now, it's very
It's like the quintessential, if I put my hat sideways, no one will know I'm an old guy. What?
Well,
but
if you put your hat sideways, no one does know.
It is true. You become a completely different person.
Right.
Some might say younger.
And so I know, though, that Hilary Duff can carry a show currently. Like, I feel like a lot of people haven't seen her in anything since she was Lizzie McGuire in her Disney days, but she can still act. And that's not my concern. My concern is, and I don't want to make this sound like ageist, but she's like 30 now. I think Hilary Duff is like 30.
She's older than that, I would think.
I don't know. I think she's 30.
What if she's running the show in the sense that Bob Saget ran the show?
I doubt that.
I highly doubt that. But if
she's 33.
Right. So in the How I Met Your Mother original show, I mean, I believe it started when they were in their mid to late 20s. And as the later seasons went on, because the show went on to last 9 seasons, Ted gets into his mid 30s and he's like, everyone in my life has moved on at this point. Like, I feel like I'm behind in my life. And I understand that millennials now are doing things at later stages in lives, but I think having her start at 33 in the show kind of puts a time limit. And I know only 1 season has been ordered and shows don't last as long as they used to, but I feel like this inherently just puts a time limit on how long this show can last.
See, but I think you just said it right there. I think I am more, as a millennial, I think I am more likely to relate to someone who, when you watch Friends, because like Friends, I think it's on a similar timeline where it starts when they're like in their mid to late 20s and they there's a whole thing where they turn 30 and then they're in their 30s. Things are different now than they were then. And I would like to watch a show, even if I can't necessarily relate to the 35-year-old or something, because I'm not 35 yet. I like the idea of something that's different than, how many sitcoms are just young, attractive people in their mid to late 20s do dating and stuff. And I'm sure this will be about doing dating and stuff, but it could be a different spin on that.
If it's going to largely follow in the footsteps of How I Met Your Mother, it is going to be largely about her dating life and trying to find the one to start a family with. And so I feel like that specifically may kind of date put a limit on how long the show can last. And who knows, maybe the show is not destined to last more than 5 seasons, so it'll be fine. And obviously, like, we see actors play younger people all the time, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's just, I want, and I desperately crave, and this is more something I guess that I want, but I miss the sitcoms that were targeted for my age group that lasted for a decade. Like How I Met Your Mother, 9-year show. I mean, New Girl wasn't nearly as long, but it was like a 6 or 7 season show, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, I miss the shows that have 6 or 7 seasons of longevity, if not more. And I feel like I'm maybe looking at 2-3 seasons here at most.
So I personally think she's the perfect choice. I think this How I Met Your Mother spinoff is a fan service to the people who are our age. And what better person to pick than someone who we grew up with? A familiar face that we can relate to. And personally, I think she's still very much a spring chicken. And if she gets 10 years older, she's still going to be a spring chicken. She's not ancient. She's not over the hill. She's very pretty. She's aging gracefully.
I mean, it has nothing to do. I'm not saying she's too old. I'm just saying I'm worried about just knowing that how we're watching the show now, and Ted hits like 35 and is like, oh my God, my life is over kind of deal.
I don't know if you've noticed, but Ted on his sideburns has streaks of gray currently in the show.
Does he really?
Yes. And you didn't even notice.
That's fair. My other concern, and as much as I really want to like this show, I feel like part of the magic of How I Met Your Mother was the ensemble cast. And we haven't seen the rest of the casting yet.
That's key. You're right. You're right about that for sure.
And so while the show obviously centers a lot around Ted and his love life and how he met the mother, I would argue that he's really a small portion of the show. A lot of it still revolves around the ensemble cast. And they're really the ones that kind of pick up the slack and drive the show, because as much as people relate to Ted in real life, and
Ted annoys the shit out of me.
Well, as much as people like, Ted is probably the most realistic character. Everyone else is kind of an extreme caricature of somebody. Like Barney is the ultimate ladies' man who is super extreme.
Which,
Robin,
by the way, he's
ultimate
for sure the one that everyone's going to remember. Like, when I think of How I Met Your Mother, I think of Barney, not Ted.
Right. And like Marshall and Lily are the perfect idyllic couple, but like really no couple is that perfect. You know what I mean? I'm sure there are.
Right.
Well, but I mean, what you see in the show.
Ouch.
I'm just like,
let's hit the soundboard. What do you have on the soundboard for that?
But basically, I feel like having that ensemble cast and the supporting cast, it was almost like lightning in a bottle. And even like Colby Smulders was a relative unknown, and she came in and she took the show by storm. Like, people loved Robin Scherbatsky, and she made that character her own.
Well, she
Legs
does
for
smolder.
days.
I mean, come on.
So it's really, I feel like no matter how much I love Hilary Duff, and I think she can carry a show because I've seen what she can do in Younger, I am not totally sold on this until I see the rest of the cast, because that is just as important, if not more important to me.
That's where I 100% agree with you. I think Hilary Duff can play a character that parallels Ted, but isn't a Control-C, Control-V. I struggle with what you fill her with, because all of the characters are...
Don't fill her with anything.
Well, I struggle with what characters you surround her with, because all of them, like you said, are so extreme that if you even try to get close to that, it'll feel like a cheap imitation, and it just...
Right. Agreed.
It won't feel right. And it's a real big challenge for them to fill that void with something that's both completely unique, but also that works. And, you know, I look forward to seeing what they come up with on this one.
So Hulu has ordered this. It's given them a 10-episode series order. Which,
that makes me sad, too.
Yeah,
I've
I don't know if
24 episode seasons. What is this world?
Does that mean like 40-minute to an hour-long episodes? Because that's another big shift. Or is this a like, sometimes shows get small orders for initial seasons. Like I think Seinfeld got like a 6-episode order, and that was still 22-minute episodes. And things are a lot different now. But is that supposed to be an entire season? I guess is the question, because it doesn't really specify here. If it is, then it's going to be a huge change. That's a huge change.
Which you would think that they would just go all in and at least give it like an 18. I don't know if 18 is even like a standard number, but at least give it like more episodes, because think about all of the people who are disappointed when the Lizzie McGuire reboot got canned. And now this is their chance to basically kind of see a pseudo-adult Lizzie McGuire.
Right.
People are going to be on board. Just order more episodes. Give it
like
me
Techtic
what I
said.
want.
Can you imagine they picked the Hilary Duff cast?
Yeah. The Lizzie McGuire cast, you mean? Yeah, I want Gordo. For sure.
That's the father.
Right. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, yeah, I think like Techtic said, this is geared towards our generation. This is going to put asses in the seats no matter what. So I kind of agree. Why not order more? But I don't know. Streaming services might be stingy. Maybe, I don't know. It seems like they should be able to get people hooked on something for more episodes than 10 episodes in a season. But who knows? We'll find out. There's no release date on this yet. There's nothing attached to this. It was just announced last week. Hulu will be taking charge of making How I Met Your Father, starring Lizzie McGuire / Hilary Duff. So be on the lookout for more details on that. This brings us to What Are You Up To Wednesday. I've been up to some things, so I'm going to take the lead on this one. The headliner, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes.
This is free currently, I believe. This is free for all PlayStation owners. You don't need Plus. I don't have Plus. Just go get it. I also got Moss VR and Astrobot Rescue Mission VR. Haven't tried those yet. Jumped right to Horizon Zero Dawn. There's some goods and some bads. Let's talk about both really quick. The bads. I'll start with the bads. We're in Mass Effect territory. It might be too RPG. I don't quite know yet, but
come on.
It's definitely heading in that direction. There's a lot of talking to folks, which I'm not super interested in, especially when I have to like pick responses. They're very much trying to do this whole like, what is it in Mass Effect? I tried to remember this in a million episodes. I never remember Paragon, Renegade, or something like that.
Yep, that's correct.
They're trying to do that in a sense. Have either of you ever played this game?
Oh yeah, I played it. I loved it.
Okay.
This was one of those games where I sat down and I think I played this through in a few weeks because it was so good.
I basically just got past. I'm not far. Like, I've had a couple of like hour and a half long play sessions. I just got past the proving, so I'm early. Like I'm just now learning shit. But it's the good. So the good is, even though I am terrible at stealth, I love games that allow me to focus on stealth to try to better my stealth skills. And this game clearly cares very deeply about, okay, how are you going to navigate conflicts with machines in such a way where you don't die? Which, by the way, I have already died multiple times. I love bow and arrow combat. Like, there's certainly a few elements so far where I'm like, they stole this from Tomb Raider. It is like, there are elements of it where I'm like, this is a Tomb Raider clone. And to be clear, that is not a bad thing at all. I played, I think the first Tomb Raider that came out for the Xbox One, played it all the way through, loved it. But yeah, bow and arrow combat. There's a lot I don't know yet. I'm early in the game. I like the story. The story's good so far. It's certainly keeping my attention. Yeah, I'll report back. But
I would urge you to stick it out a little bit more.
I want to hedge, because don't be surprised if I stop. If I stop, that's why. That's where I'm getting. I'm not planning to stop right now, but in past experiences like this, that sort of experience of talking to folks and like deciding what to do with resources, it wears me down. There's a certain niche level where like Dead Space and Last of Us have, where there's a certain amount of resource management, a certain amount of skill treeing that you can do, but if there's too much, I will drown under it. Also, Arkham and Spider-Man have the perfect amount, and this might just be a little bit more than what I'm comfortable with, but I might be able to weather that storm.
I would argue if you're getting too bogged down by resource management, just turn it on easy mode. There's a mode in the game where you can play it through where it's very story focused and you don't really have to worry about that stuff at all.
I have too much pride to do that. Officially.
Good on you.
I would say, though, the story is worth doing it. If it comes between having the pride to stick through resource management or turning down the difficulty so you can just forget about that and play through the story, definitely, like, it is worth just playing through the story. I would also say that I believe the further you get in the game, like, most of the inner character dialogue, you can kind of skip unless it's an important cutscene. I don't remember, like, I think I blew through at a certain point. Like, I didn't care about side missions. I was mostly invested in the main story. And so I stopped talking to tertiary characters.
And that's what my problem is, by the way, is like, there is a huge difference, even if it's important in conversation, between a cutscene and if you're selecting responses. It might sound counterintuitive, but selecting responses to a conversation and making it sound robotic pulls me so far out of the story. I would so much rather have a cutscene for every single interaction I have with another person. And when I don't get that, I think that's part of it. I think I get annoyed.
You are going to have a bad time with Mass Effect, and I'm going to urge you. You have to just stick it through. You're missing out on so much good gameplay story.
But I think that's what I just touched on. I finally figured it out. I think that's what my problem is with games
Yeah,
like
but
this.
with those dialogue-based games, you get to eventually have the sex.
That's not of critical importance to me. It's going to blow your mind.
But the dialogue-based, like, dialogue choices are what drive the differences in endings and stuff.
I understand that, yeah. I know what it's trying to accomplish, but I'll tell you, I like cutscenes a lot. I like movies. It makes perfect sense. Based on my personality, that trajectory checks out for me. Another thing I want to mention as a minus, the name Aloy is so dumb.
Boo.
I hate it so much.
Boo.
It's the worst name ever. I'm going to get tired of hearing it. I already am a little bit.
Do you at least like the music score?
I do. I do like the music.
You're breaking
I do
my
like
heart.
the story.
Horizon was one of my favorite games of the last generation. You're just breaking it.
Look, it's still really good, but I'm trying to hedge a little bit so that when your heart is broken, it's not shattered into a million pieces. So that's me on the gaming front. TV wise, The Circle, it's going on, and let's just say that my fiance and I have finished the slate of episodes that was given to us by Netflix. The next slate comes out on Wednesday, the day this is released. So I'm sure you will find me watching.
Oh, are they like gating episodes?
They are. They put out 8 episodes, I think, on Wednesday. They're putting out 8 more, and then there's another 2 weeks before the finale, I think. It's pretty good. It's not as good as season 1. That's my current review, but I'll give a further review when it ends, I guess. So that's update 2. Update 3, which is more of a personal note. I've started writing again. So
Ooh-wee. Where are you writing? What are you writing?
I'm writing a book, details to be determined. I'm using this app called Highland 2.
That's kind of an interesting title.
Nope. The title
is
I'm not going to
details to be determined.
That might not be a bad title, honestly. We'll see. But shout out to any Mac users. Highland 2 is a good app. It's free for writing manuscripts, screenplays, whatever you are thinking about writing. It has a lot of outlining functions, a lot of goal-oriented, how many words do you want to write today functions that I'm responding well to so far. So go check that out. Nerdbomber.
All right, so I will save the bulk of Mortal Kombat for Tactics update.
Thanks for spoiling it.
Well, I know you were super
excited. You guys
excited.
watched Mortal Kombat? I'm just kidding. I knew you did.
So, spoiler alert, Tactic will be talking about Mortal Kombat. I will be talking about another movie that we watched this weekend. This one I think also just came out. It's a Netflix original, and it is Stowaway. And this is
You watched this?
We did. We just watched this on Saturday night. And
Tell me everything there is.
We had differing thoughts, Tactic and I.
Didn't like it.
I thought, like, I didn't think it was like movie of the year, but I thought it was probably one of the more entertaining movies that we've watched.
You have a lady boner for Anna Kendrick. So.
Who doesn't have a lady boner for Anna Kendrick, though? Come on.
I mean, I don't have a lady boner, period.
Okay,
So,
fair.
Yeah.
But I think more so than just Anna Kendrick, what I liked about this movie, so there are certain areas of this movie that are kind of tenuous at best. So the entire plot is that there is a mission to Mars. It's a 3-man mission to Mars, or a 3-person mission to Mars.
And some guy falls asleep filling up the tank, right? That's the basic gist of it.
After they launch, there is blood dripping from the ceiling, and the captain unscrews this panel and a dude drops out, and it's the panel for the life support system. So as he falls out, he's hooked on the life support system, fries it, tears it apart, and they have some issues because obviously life support is pretty important. You need oxygen to breathe.
It supports your life, yeah.
Right. And what it essentially comes down to is how they grapple with the fact that now they have a 4th person on board when they only planned for 3 people's worth of resources, and also their life support system is broken. And what I liked about this, so how and why the stowaway is on the ship is never, and this is kind of a spoiler, but it's never like truly addressed. They never really explain how or why he ended up there, if it was on purpose, if it was
He was
not.
filling the tank.
It's just he was there and everyone just seems to accept it. You don't really know by the end of the movie if he snuck on board, if he was like shoved in there, if he was just filling it up and somehow
exactly
got screwed in. Like, it doesn't make sense, but he's there.
It's exactly the kind of thing I don't like.
That's why it was frustrating, because it literally seems like he was like, well, pack him away in there, because the nook he's in is literally, there's a glass window on one side, so obviously it's not like he was like accessing it from the outside, and then there was the panel in which he was bolted into. So like,
so they put him in there. You're saying
like
So they kind of lead you to believe that he maybe would have, like, he was applying to be on the space program for the next mission. So you don't know whether he purposely got on board himself to kind of circumvent the system. They leave that up to your imagination, how you'd want to decide if he was kind of this quote unquote sketchy guy who decided to hop on board, or if it was an accident and he just happened to be there. But aside from that, I would say a lot of the science, and here's the nerd in me, a lot of the science was pretty spot on. Like, it was well researched. There was nothing that I was like glaringly like, well, that's stupid. Like, in terms of gravitational forces on a rotating ship in space, all kind of made sense.
Are there any garbage EVA sequences? Because that's my biggest like snafu with space movies.
Artificial gravity was engaged, by the way. And they did it under the guise of centripetal force.
They explained it scientifically, so it made sense.
Right, but answer my question about the EVAs.
I don't recall any EVAs. You know, EVAs are real things, right?
I know EVAs are real things. I'm just saying that sometimes they're ridiculous.
So,
anyways, yeah.
Yeah. First off, I'm gonna poke into the science.
Okay.
BS centripetal force to give you artificial gravity and what they did, okay?
I thought it was more clever than just being like, hey, we flipped the switch and now we've got gravity, bitches.
But then when they were on the outside of the switch, if the thing was inducing artificial gravity based on centripetal force, then wouldn't their tethers have always been taut? Instead, they were just like, just doing our things while we're spinning at some...
Well, they explained it. So essentially there was like a center point of they had like the ship... The habitable ship was on one end of this like spindle. There was a center point, which is where the solar array was, and then
they crossed that pivotal center point to get the oxygen.
But the gravity changed on them, so that's why they slid at a certain point and climbed at another. We're getting too in the weeds, but essentially there was at least like some scientific thought, and it wasn't just like we flipped the switch and now there's gravity, bitches. Which I said
keep
that
it in
before,
your pants.
But, like,
all right, yeah, sure. So let's say that all jives. The biggest thing, and I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it. But
well, don't spoil it. I'm sure Illeagle would like to watch this.
I will probably watch this.
Okay, the biggest thing was the ending. It was stupid. It just made no sense. They were just like, it's time to wrap this up right quick.
I'll keep that in mind.
And made me so mad.
There was like a timeline continuity confusion towards the end of the movie that you're just kind of like, did this need to happen now? That's the only thing that I will say. But I think overall, the acting was really well done. We have to remember that we're starved for movies right now. I think I've seen much more confusing space movies in the past. Like, let's be real. A lot of the space movies, I know Interstellar, I remember sitting there and I was like, the frick is going on?
That
and I'm a nerd.
Great. Don't you dare.
I didn't get it. It didn't jive with me. It was a little too weird and out there. And I thought this was at least a real scenario that could happen in space that wasn't like weirdly crazy, and I thought a lot of it was just quiet moments of intense acting. And what I liked was that a lot of it, like, there wasn't a bunch of over exposition. A lot of it was left to the actors to kind of portray their characters' feelings and thoughts and everything in their physical and facial expressions. And that I think it was good. I enjoyed it.
They were also kind of the worst at what they do. The one guy's one job was to grow plants. He sucked at that.
Hey, Daniel Day Kim is great. Okay, I don't need you bad mouthing him either.
So you're telling me you lose one critical life support system. Oh, now you guys are going to die. Okay, that's not how NASA does things, folks. There's backup systems. There's backup life support systems that should be sufficient to handle the whole mission.
All right,
Also,
we touched a nerve with Techtic.
Also, mission control was like, yeah, we can't figure out anything. We had, you guys remember the movie Biodome with Pauly Shore and like one of the Baldwin brothers? They made a giant filter out of cigarette butts. And we had astronauts couldn't figure out how to make an oxygen scrubber.
So what I will say, and again, I feel like you're verging on spoilers potentially. What I will say is that it was also interesting, and one of the things that could explain away your spoilers, and I feel like we're getting in the weeds on this movie a lot, but one of the things that could explain away your spoilers was that this was not NASA. This was a corporate-run space endeavor. This is a corporate-run space endeavor in the movie, and it may have been telling...
Company's first go-round.
Right. So
this movie has a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I think
it's closer to my rating than Technic's rating, to be totally honest. I feel like he's super nerding out. I feel like it was
I'd give it a 40.
60% audience score indicates the mixed reviews that you guys are handing to me right now. So I
would say if you're not going to get your panties in a twist about every little scientific detail,
they're so twisted.
And if you can just appreciate like gravitas and emotional acting, I feel like you'll like the movie.
Just remember, when you're appreciating the gravitas of it, it's due to centripetal force.
So what's Nerdbomber, assuming that completes your update, I want to talk about Mortal Kombat. Let's switch gears cinematically to something that is known to be ridiculous.
That was way more believable. Jeez.
I thought Mortal Kombat was great, to be totally honest.
So you guys loved it?
Yes.
It's one of those movies you have to go in expecting it to be a cheesy, fan servicey action movie.
Right.
Like, don't expect anything more from it. That's all you want. Like, that's all you need from it. That's all you want from it. That it'll give you exactly what you want.
So I believe that I had even voiced who my favorite Mortal Kombat character is in the Twitter, and that is Scorpion. I've always been a huge Scorpion fan my whole life, and I distinctly recall an argument between my brother and I where we were arguing about who's better, and he was always Sub-Zero and I was always Scorpion. And I would say, Scorpion's the good guy. He's the good guy. And he'd be, oh, why'd you got a flaming skull? I'm like, he's the good guy. You could just tell. Sub-Zero's bad. And if you look into his backstory, he is the good guy. He's just trying to avenge his family. And you know what? This movie put that to bed, and I love it. And it's not a spoiler because it's known lore. And way to go, Mortal Kombat. Team Scorpion. There
are definitely some storytelling plot holes, but at the end of the day...
you don't show up expecting that to be perfect. Mortal Kombat.
Let's be real. Most video game movie adaptations are not good. And don't get me wrong, like Doom was one of my favorite movies growing up, but that is a piece of piling trash next to Mortal Kombat. The only saving grace from Doom was that there was
It's got The Rock in it.
Well, yeah, but you also there's this first person sequence in that movie that was like super memorable to me as a kid. That I was like, this is so dope. This is way better than anything that Doom could produce.
That's what Kid Nerdbomber said.
A ringing endorsement. Better than Doom. You heard it here first, folks.
But like, I will say the gore was there, but it wasn't over the top. Like, there were some fatalities, but for the most part, like, I don't know the last Mortal Kombat game that you guys have played.
And a new challenger appeared. It was really, really neat to see a new...
I think I played X, which was a long time ago.
Well, the games were super, super gory, at least the last few. To the point where, like, it's almost... You can't have queasy people watching you play the game.
Right. I remember.
And this gave you elements of that without being over the top.
Right on. Mortal Kombat. This is on HBO Max, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's in theaters and HBO Max.
Kind of hijacked Techtic's update. Techtic, what else you got for us? Or is that it?
Those two movies were basically the majority of my update.
Right on. Well, hey, that brings us to quiz time. I'm your quiz captain this week. And speaking of movies, we're gonna do a quiz centered around my favorite movie. This is a top 10 movie for me. I don't know exactly where it sits, but it's a top 10 movie for me. Like, out of all movies. The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser. This was, you talk about Doom being a young Nerdbomber classic. Young Illeagle watched this movie. Boy, if you can wear out a DVD, I came close with this one. So I have 6 questions, 1 tiebreaker in front of me. All of them numerical, so we'll again be doing Price is Right style rules. As I believe the previous winner, Nerdbomber, will go first. We'll give Techtic a sporting chance, although you will each go first once because there's an even number of questions, so kind of balanced in that sense. Okay, the first question is one of these standard movie quiz questions. I guess it's kind of a 2-part question. So the first part, what was the budget for The Mummy? Reported by Wikipedia. 1999, golden age of filmmaking, right before the turn of the century.
I'm going to say 200 million. I feel like there were a lot of special effects.
That's a good guess, but I feel like it's busty. So I'm going to go 6 million.
Busty.
It is indeed large-chested. $80 million. It was. So $200 million, by the way, is like astronomically high. Like,
is it really?
I don't think like Pirates of the Caribbean. Like I think some of the Pirates of the Caribbeans might have broken that number many years down the road. But for 1999, I think 80 was probably a lot.
I feel like I'm thinking like Marvel big bucks these days.
Yeah, Endgame's
movies
budget
for
I think
way
was like
cheaper than that.
I think Endgame's budget might have been like $300, and that was like gee whiz. That was all kinds of stuff. So Techtic, hats off to you. You're on the board. The next question, as you can imagine, based on the first question, box office take. What was the total box office earnings of this film? Came out May 7th, 1999. I'm looking for an answer in...
I'm going to go 500 million.
I feel like it's not that high, so I'm going to play it safe and say 1 million.
Techtic, you're big chested on this one. 416 million. 416.4. You were very close. You went a little bit over the top there.
That almost feels cheap, but I'll take the point anyway.
That movie should have grossed way more. This movie, and this is not a
was that
question.
to date, or is that like a range?
This is the number that's reported on Wikipedia. That's what I can
From
tell you.
up till when? Like when was it last checked?
I do not know. I mean, it's not still making box office money because it's not at the box office anymore.
I bet you there's a cool 84 million in there.
Okay, so you both have gotten a point by kind of the other person busted. Also, for what it's worth, this movie made so much money that the morning after the opening night, the studio called Stephen Sommers and said, we need a second one. And so The Mummy Returns was born. But by that token, this has also spawned a number of other movies, and I am here including The Scorpion King and its additional Scorpion King movies. This Mummy universe, how many movies are in it?
I think it's 6, right?
I mean, I'm not gonna say what.
Well, I know, but like I think it's 6.
Techtic.
That feels like a good guess, but I'm gonna go 7.
Oh,
it's 8. He plus one you. It's 8
You
total
jerk.
movies.
So that wasn't a jerk move. It wasn't a $1.
That was strategery.
That was how many movies could they have possibly made move.
He has Techtic has another point, first of all. So it's 2-1. There was The Mummy Returns, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and then The Scorpion King, The Scorpion King 2, Rise of a Warrior, The Scorpion King 3, Battle for Redemption, The Scorpion King 4, Quest for Power, and The Scorpion King, Book of Souls.
see, I thought they stopped. I thought The Scorpion King was a trilogy. That's why I went with 6. I didn't realize they went into 4 and 5.
Which one of those is animated?
None of them. Book of Souls came out in 2018, so pretty recently.
Did it
actually.
really?
Yeah. Speaking of animated, though, Techtic, you're hinting at our next question. Briefly after The Mummy, the movie, came out in 1999, there was an animated series known as The Mummy, the Animated Series, and later known as The Mummy, Secrets of the Magi, that aired on the WB network.
Saturday morning cartoons, baby. I watched that show.
Starting in 2001. How many episodes of this show were there? It is no longer on the air.
54 episodes.
And Nerdbomber.
I feel like we only got 2 seasons of this, and kids shows, though, they ran like half the year, but that puts me close to Techtic's answer, and I don't like it. I'm going to say 20.
26. It's tied again. There were indeed 2 seasons. This only ran until 2003. They changed the title to Secrets of the Magi after the first season.
I feel like it was always on, though.
Well,
They ran the reruns a lot after they stopped making it. I remember that because it was always the same episodes. I was like, what is going on here? Why am I watching the same episodes all the time?
I'm sure it was an amazing show. I never watched it myself, but
I am
gone but
really
not forgotten.
surprised.
So
You're a big Mummy guy.
We're tied. Yeah, I missed the boat, I guess. We're tied 2-2. So this is exciting. We have 2 questions left and then a tiebreaker. Here's an interesting question, assuming you both have seen the movie. In what year do the events of the original 1999 Brendan Fraser movie take place?
Oh boy. Was it real time? I don't remember. Or was it in the past?
You can't answer those.
I know he can't answer those.
I wasn't
I'm thinking
planning
out
on
loud to
answering.
myself. Screw it. I'm going to say 1999. I think it was real time.
No, that's super late. It was in the 1960s. So I'm just going to say 1960.
You both busted. 1926.
I don't know why.
1926.
Now that you say it, yeah, I'm seeing the date scroll across the screen.
Brendan Fraser's character was in the French Foreign Legion, which I'm not even sure if that still exists.
I was referring to the 8th movie, by the way.
Right. Okay, yeah, my mistake. So yeah, 1926 is when it takes place. Originally, the kind of prologue to the movie showing the guy being mummified is 1290 BC. He was spent all that time as a dead person that became a mummy. Okay, so you both busted. So that means this next question is likely going to seal things unless one of you busts again. The last question that I have: what is the critics' Rotten Tomatoes score of the first The Mummy film? Critics, not audience.
I'm going to give it a 77%.
I'm going to say that the audience loved it, but the critics didn't love it at first. They probably came around to it after the fact. So I'm going to say initially they probably gave it like a 50.
Nerdbomber takes it.
Bud.
61%. Audience score 75. So you were kind of right. First of all, that audience score is way too low. The critic score is also too low. I think people have come around to this movie, especially members of our generation. I wouldn't say it's a cult classic. It's still kind of mainstream enough to not have that status, but this is such a good movie. I can't recommend enough. Go watch this movie.
Weren't they doing like a remake of this movie series?
Well, 2017 they came out with the Tom Cruise one that was terrible that I saw in theaters. Don't see that movie. Don't.
So you didn't? Did you not include that in?
No, that's a different. I didn't include that in the 8 movies. That's
Okay.
a different rendition. There have been many versions of the Mummy done. So I was just referring to
one that took place in the 1960s.
Maybe I couldn't say honestly. But the Rotten Tomatoes scores went progressively down. Even though I actually think The Mummy Returns is also a fantastic movie. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is not good.
The Scorpion King is when it started to go downhill.
No, it went downhill with the third one. Although I think The Scorpion King was actually before the third movie, so I think you're right. In any case, Nerdbomber takes it. The bonus question I had, the library scene in this movie where she knocks over all of the shelves, how many takes do you think that took to shoot? They had to reset, took a whole day to reset the set after shooting 1 take of it.
I'm going to say it took 5 takes.
I'm going to say 2 takes.
This was a bit of a trick. It took 1 take. She did it in
Really?
1 take. Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's a good thing you guys won in regulation, or Nerdbomber won in regulation, because that's actually a terrible bonus question now that I think about it. You guys would have both busted, then we would have been screwed.
I would have been closer. I was closer on a lot of the answers, but I busted.
Both only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And you busted. So, Nerdbomber takes it. Nerdbomber will host next week's quiz. We thank, again, our Patreon producers for helping to produce this episode. And we thank you all for showing up to go on a journey with us. Listen to us talk about things. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you laughed. Hashtag Ratchetverse. Hashtag How I Met Your Father. Hashtag, what was the first thing we talked about? Hashtag Cap4. Yeah, feel free to chat with us about any and all of those things or anything else over on Twitter. Handles already mentioned. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're so inclined. And we'll see you in the month of May. Have a great week.